Think about where you are right now, what you're doing, who you're with. Think about everything in your life that's brought you to this point, the careers that you've held, the degrees that you hold, everything that you've accomplished that's brought you here today. Now imagine you had to leave all of that behind, whether it's for family, work, or a humanitarian crisis like war. Let's say you find yourself migrating to a new country where none of that lifetime work experience counts. When it comes to education and work experience, you are starting from the very beginning. That's the reality for thousands of immigrant professionals, especially here in the United States. Think about what a waste that is. Brain waste. Brain waste refers to the widespread underemployment that occurs for highly skilled professional immigrants because of different career barriers. Some of those barriers are more obvious and easy to address, like learning the English language. Others are more nuanced. Many people are surprised to learn that here in the US, there are no systems in place to recognize foreign credentials, despite having an immigration system that prioritizes pathways for professional immigrants. Once those professionals get here, it is entirely up to themselves to advocate for themselves. And it's ultimately up to the employers and the academic institutions whether or not they choose to recognize those foreign credentials. Now, there were companies and organizations that provide credential evaluation services, and these are much needed programs. However, they often come at a cost, usually $200 to $300 per document. And even if you go through that process, you pay for that service, there's still no guarantee that your credentials are going to be recognized or accepted. A 2020 study by the Migration Policy Institute found that nearly half of recently arrived immigrants have a bachelor's degree or higher. And yet, of those college-educated immigrants, 21% of them are either unemployed or working in jobs that require no more than a high school diploma. That's about 2 million people. That affects all of us. I want you to think about, over the last few years, about the different labor shortages that we've seen in different industries. During the COVID pandemic, we desperately needed more healthcare workers, and patients felt the results of that. According to World Education Services, the healthcare industry alone expects to see a shortage of 900,000 nurses by 2030. Across North Carolina, we are struggling to fill teacher positions and school administrator roles. Our teachers feel the burden of that. For years across the country, police departments have been struggling with staffing shortages, which results in longer response times to 911 calls. Brain waste is an issue that affects everyone, not just the immigrant community.
So if you can boost it.
Another study by the Migration Policy Institute found that college-educated immigrants who are underemployed miss out on $39 billion of wages every year. That results in a loss of around $10 billion of annual tax revenue. Y'all, think about what an additional $10 billion of annual tax revenue could accomplish. Let's think about that. We have labor shortages in specialized industries, and we have a highly skilled professional immigrant workforce. But there are no career pathways that allow these professionals to work in the fields where we need them the most. Brain waste is an issue that affects economic growth. It contributes to existing labor shortages, and it affects every single one of us, not just the immigrant community. I'd like to tell you about Rosita. Rosita was a lawyer in Iran before coming here to the United States. She has over a decade of legal experience. She worked her way through leadership. She holds multiple degrees, including a graduate degree, and she speaks fluent English. Since coming to the U.S., she's volunteered, she's joined professional networking groups, she's worked with a career coach. Yet she was recently told that if she wanted to pursue a paralegal degree, none of her previous coursework would count. She was still expected to start her education from the very beginning. Someone with Rosita's skills and expertise should not be wasting time and money taking basic computer classes and introductory math courses. What kind of impact does that have on an individual, on the person? How much of your own identity do you place on your profession, on your career, what you've accomplished throughout your life? What would it mean for you to have that part of yourself erased as if it doesn't matter. When newcomers arrive in this country, they are already giving up their culture, their home, sometimes their language. The problem of brain waste takes away a person's identity on top of that. Brain waste strips someone of their accomplishments, their lifetime's worth of experiences, and their sense of self-worth. Brain waste is more than just an economic issue. It is a human rights issue. So what are we going to do about it? There's not an easy answer here because every industry is going to need a different approach. The process for recognizing internationally trained teachers is going to look very different than the process for recognizing internationally trained nurses. For some fields, it means having very clear policies about what to look for when you're evaluating foreign credentials. Some industries may still require additional training to get someone familiar with US-based laws and regulations. Some trade industries may require some type of skills demonstration. Whatever the process may look like, these systems need to exist, and one person can make a difference. In Rosita's case, one person made a difference. After multiple visits to admissions offices, Rosita finally found someone who was willing to recognize her experience and to advocate on her behalf. One person who spent hours out of their day sending emails, making phone calls, and educating their colleagues about what type of credentials their program will actually accept. Because of that education advocate, today, Rosita is taking paralegal courses. Her first step to practicing law here in the United States. A professional calling that's become part of who she is. The good news is that we are starting to see more progress in this space. In 2024, the state of Virginia passed legislation that allows internationally trained nurses and doctors to practice medicine here in the US under provisional licenses while they pursue full licensure. How cool is that? The state of Utah is actually leading the nation in these kind of reforms. In 2024, Utah passed amendments to their state's occupational licensing code to create pathways for immigrant professionals. We need to keep pushing for these kind of reforms. It shouldn't take Rosita hours of individual advocacy efforts for someone to recognize her experience. These type of reforms need to exist everywhere, not just in states like Utah and Virginia. And right now they don't. We need more bridge programs to help transition professional immigrants into the US workforce, not for them to start their education from scratch. Now that you know about brain waste, you can do something about it. I want you to pay attention to legislation and policy work that seeks to recognize foreign credentials. Think about your industry, your place of work. Are there systems in place for recognizing credentials? If not, what would they look like? From now on, when you hear that word, waste, I don't want you to just think about garbage or landfills anymore. I want you to think about human capital. I want you to think about underemployment and labor shortages. I want you to think about that $10 billion of lost annual tax revenue because of this type of underemployment. Think about Rosita and the thousands of immigrant professionals like her who are struggling every day to maintain their identity while also navigating career options in a new country. Think about the cost of brain waste, the cost to our economy, the cost to an individual. Think about yourself and what part you can play in addressing this issue. Because ultimately, brain waste is a human rights issue that affects every single one of us. And it's going to take every single one of us to do something about it. Because at the end of the day, the cost of brain waste is more than we can afford. Thank you.